went up with his horse and won it. But unfortunately, he was a week or so ago to Peter, Jackie's husband, and Peter said, how typical. Well, I'll let you people work that out. Peter might know more than I. He also had the civic side of it. He got mentioned in those two histories. Was that, as far as I can recall, his first wife Jane died of cancer. Have some connection here with that. Or what about this place, the Stanislaus? Well, John had a connection here. John didn't know this place. Probably a nice little, as his ancestors know all about it. And we'll see you around. And have a good evening. And keep talking. God bless you all.
Mr. Chairman, Michael Craig, Jackie and Peter Grant, the Grant clan and distinguished guests and etc. Well, being a Victorian, some unkind souls would say a Mexican, and some of you people are nasty, I'm privileged to speak at a gathering to celebrate the life of John Grant. We are here to honour him and his descendants, and also Grant's gifted biographer, Jackie Grant. One reason we study history is because the past, present and future converge. The past is immanent in the present. History doesn't repeat itself, but we consult the past to help us understand the present. And if we're shrewd, as John Grant most certainly was, we consult both past and present to gain some wisdom for the future. A great change has come over Australian historiography. At Christmas and for birthdays, we can now select from a wide and almost bewildering range of books of Australian history and of Australian biography. More and more, people are starting and seeking to understand their past. Most of us saw on TV that magnificent pageant on Sydney Harbour on the 26th of January 1988. It was a time to think of the Anglo-Celt ancestors and of their descendants and what they had contributed over the years. And we thought similarly of our European and Asian friends and of their backgrounds. And I think that around 1988, many of us tried for the first time to understand the black people who were here thousands of years before us. I don't need to remind you of the recent and enormous explosion of interest in and publications on Aboriginal prehistory and history. It's almost an industry in itself. I don't think it's too much to say that as we head towards AD 2000, our understanding of our past is being substantially expanded and modified. And modified in another very heartening way, in this age of the common man. People matter more than emperors, cabbages and kings. People were the myriads of humans and societies who helped substantially to form the present. All people are worthy of study if we had the time and resources. Hence now the enormous upsurge in the writing and reading of social history. It's in this context that I welcome Jackie's biography. It reminds us that all here tonight come from families who have histories to tell. We have living histories within ourselves. Some families would have better records and make better reading than others, but most family histories would be worth the telling, and the more the telling, the better. They'd all help us to comprehend better the rich social mixture which Australia is today. John Grant was apparently, and very apparently, an ordinary Irishman who made good in New South Wales. Jackie's book isn't self-indulgent genealogy, which isn't history. Genealogy concerns only a few descendants. Jackie's work takes an unsentimental look at Grant's life and times, and by golly, it's an unsentimental look. It is therefore properly biographical and historical. You will, of course, buy the book. That's what the book launching is partly about. Do you think that we're all invited here just because we're good-looking and related or connected in some way to the Grants? Not at all. You are to buy the books. I'm on a commission. Research is an expensive business, and our biographer deserves her royalties. And you'll find, what's more, that the book is a good read. And when you get around to it, just look at her bibliography and references. It's scholarly work which has taken Jackie across the world to check, for example, public record office documents. One of the fascinations. Ah yes, research isn't cheap, and it can be exciting, frustrating and extremely tedious. In Australia, Jackie has made excellent use of the New South Wales archives. The biography has several themes. Perhaps my favourite is that Grant is a fine example of a Macquarie convict. The boundaries of Grant's punishment were coterminous with those of Macquarie's governorship from 1809 to 1821. Macquarie's policy gave Grant a chance and he seized it avidly. All these things happened a long time ago, and Jackie, we applaud you. Teenage students together, that must make it about 15 years, I think. I loved the book, that's the first thing, the publication that after launch, I loved it. It was about a brave, tough and clever man, about which much is known and much has already been said. However, I'm not launching him, he's launched himself. Perhaps a glance around the room might serve to confirm that. What I'm to launch is the book itself. It's a history of a man, it's a history of the settlement of our state, it's an account of events and people which is alive and which for me was filled with things that I could say, gee, I recognise that. Or I've driven up a street. I lived for years, as many of you know, in Orange, and there's Lord's Place. The Simeon Lord is featured prominently in the book. There's Isley Road. Thomas Isley was a great competitor of John Grant's when they were trying to acquire land at the same time as one another. The book starts in Ireland, and in the first few pages you've got love, betrayal, false swearing, criminal procedure, remorse, death, and that's only the first 5 pages. Well, it was all founded on sex. It caused me to think. I've been trying to be a lawyer since I was 17 years old. I wondered about the terrible troubles that the farmers, the tenants had with their landlords. And I could see from the troubles that they had the genesis of a law which has affected probably many of you in this room, the Agricultural Holdings Act. It affected people who were share farmers or people who had share farmers. And over the years I've had to advise many about either how to get someone off or how they could get off on the best available terms and so on. But the need for such a law, I'm sure, stemmed from what's been written by Jackie about the troubles in Ireland at the time of John Grant. The publication of the book has, perhaps one page of the book has a significance which I think might properly be adverted to. It involves a public proclamation of affection by the author for her spouse. The book is, the page of the book to which I refer says simply, for Peter. And in this day and age, that I think is worthy of comment. Now, the relevance of all this to the book is simply that the first few pages caused me to dream and to think of all sorts of things. The rest of the book is just the same. I commend it to you. As for its formal launching,
if I could have a bottle of champagne, I'll hit the author on the head. and we'll call it launched. Ladies and gentlemen, I formally launch Providence by Jacqueline.
Thank you very much, Michael. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It was just about 10 weeks ago, I said to Peter, "Now I've finished writing this book, let's plan a launch." While the printers are doing their job, I was thinking of a quiet gathering, small get-together with a champagne or two. And he said, "Yes, let's. But don't you worry about the details. You've done enough. I'll look after the launch." And he did. With the initiative befitting, I can only say after studying John Grant for the last 3 years, a descendant of that resourceful ancestor of so many of you here tonight. And just as John Grant achieved so much through hard work and risk-taking, and carried along with him so many family and friends, so has Peter in the lead-up to tonight. To reach this point, where Providence is a completed book, it has been necessary to put in a lot of long hours. But so many people along the way have made it light and happy work. I have expressed my thanks in the book to those who made the task easier and so enjoyable. Peter, our daughters Selena, Kate and Sarah, Father Noel Grant, Lorna Sheridan of the family tree fame, Bill Callahan, cartographer, Hans Hubner, computer whiz, Virginia DeSantis, photographer in Ireland, all of whom are here tonight, and so many others. Thank you. I express my, yes, thank you. I express my gratitude to former ABC presenter and history buff, Bill Peach, who responded most favourably to my story, and whose formal response I received just in time to be able to put it on the back cover of the book. And to Patrick O'Farrell, Professor of History at the University of New South Wales, who was both gracious and learned in his response to the manuscript. To Michael Croke and Father Tom Finn for your roles in tonight's affair. A very big thank you, for which Peter, I know, wishes to treat in more detail. To His Honour, Justice Grinder, a man of wonderful individual qualities, capacities and successes, a man so busy in our busiest of worlds, and one who has that best of human characteristics, a spontaneous, positive response to a request. There was no hesitation, Brian, no, well, I must check the date, just, yes, of course, I'll be there. And most humbling, from His Honour, his I'll be honoured. Thank you, Brian. And I would like to repeat a thanks tonight to an especial one, and that is to Sid Ingham. Sid, you must hear again, and tonight publicly, how important was your enthusiastic response to the manuscript I sent you back in December last year. You made the difference when the difference was needed. Your interest and your encouragement could not have been better timed. I think I even got to enjoy the barbed corrections of my footnotes and the caustic comments on the text like, "Who are you writing for? Women's Day readers? Get rid of that. Or we don't want to know." Thank you, Sid. So many people have come into our lives because of this book, including all of you here tonight that we have not met before Providence. Let me tell you of just one special significant meeting. At least 12 months ago, Peter and I were in Sydney on an absolutely get away from the blinking book weekend. And on a cruiser in the middle of Sydney Harbour, we were introduced to an Irish couple. Mary and Vince O'Connor. Their charm and their Irish brogue added mightily to the enjoyment of the day, and there was at one point a brief discussion of the book, John Grant, Moyne, Tipperary. Mary and Vince hadn't heard of Moyne and didn't know any Grants, but they were interested in how I treated the 19th century anti-landlord issue. I described a little of what I had discovered about the Grant family and their landlord, Gilbert Marr. It was Marr's son, Nicholas, of course, that John's sister, our John's sister, brutally murdered. And for the attempted murder of the same man, earlier attempted murder, John was actually sent to New South Wales. And one of those crazy coincidences occurred. Mary O'Connor said, "I'm a descendant of some Marrs from Tipperary. I have some information on them, but I've never read it very carefully." She went home and read it later, and of course, her family of Marrs come from Moyne, Tipperary. We have from time to time jokingly referred to her as the enemy since that discovery, but Mary is with us tonight, and I welcome her and Vince with the warmest of welcomes. The 1,000 Irish welcome. Which brings me back full circle to our celebration tonight and its cause. A young Irishman who 183 years ago last Saturday, 2nd of July, sailed into Sydney Harbour aboard the convict ship Providence. He had been banished for life from his native land because the world he lived in was 183 years less enlightened than we are today. It was a world in which injustice reigned because of the existence of a ruling and a ruled class, because of lack of recognition and acceptance between Catholic and Protestant, and because of fewer freedoms for the majority. In Australia in 1994, we live in and celebrate an egalitarian state, where the differences between Catholic and Protestant are theologically recognised as just a few decimal points, and where we are free to gather when, how, and where we want. I am not a Grant by birth, and I never will be a Grant, delighting totally in my own heritage, but I am happy and proud to bear the name Grant. I am happy and proud, too, to have written this story. It was Banjo Paterson nearly 100 years ago who referred to this and so many others like it as the untold stories in his poem, The Explorers. The poem's lengthier than I will read, than I will read in total, but after Paterson describes the crossing of the Blue Mountains, he says, "They saw the land and it was good, a land of fatness, all untrod, and gave their sign and thanks to God. The way is one, and straightway from the barren coast there came a westward marching host, that I and ever onward pressed with eager faces to the west, along the pathway of the sun. And lo, a miracle, the land that yesterday was all unknown, the wild man's boomerang was thrown where now great busy cities stand. It was not much, some say, that these should win their way where none withstood. In sooth, there was not much of blood, no war was fought between the seas. It was not much. But we who know the strange capricious land they trod, at times a stricken, parching sod, at times with raging floods beset, through which they found their lonely way, are quite content that some should say it was not much, while we can feel that nothing in the ages old, in song or story written yet, on Grecian urn or Roman arch, though it should ring with clash of steel, could braver histories unfold than this bush story, yet untold, the story of their westward march. Well, the story has now been told of the westward march of John Grant, the forebear of so many of you here tonight. And John Grant's story is one of the bravest of those brave histories of Australia's bush story. I hope you enjoy it.
you sure, Sarah, with that, whether your mother's unfaithfulness means you'll have a 3-hour documentary